Seems like my slides are, here we go. Can everybody see slide number 2? For today's agenda, we will be obviously going through some introductions in just a moment. We are going to be providing an overview of the session proposals, and you will be getting a step-by-step instructions on how to log on to the website and some of the new instructions and directions that we have for this year. We're also going to be participating in an exciting brainstorm. I know that for some of you, this might be the first time that you're submitting a proposal, or you're here because you're also wanting to brainstorm on certain topics. And then finally, we'll obviously go through some questions and final tips and takeaways. So I would love to invite you all to join us in this Mentimeter poll. If you could please join us at menti.com. That's menti.com, menti.com. And the code is here on the screen. The code is 61623925. Again, the code is 61623925. And once you log in, you're going to see some prompting questions. We would love to know if this is your first time. So, you could click on some choices here. The first one is never been, sounds cool. You're new to APA and the annual conference. Maybe you're a beginner and it's your first time submitting. Perhaps you're a novice and you've submitted, but maybe in the past you haven't been selected. So, we're happy that you're here. You keep trying. And then obviously the last two are amateur experience, but you would love to do more or better as you go through more conference proposals. And the last one is pro. Your experience, you've probably had some conference proposals accepted. You've actually probably mentored other people in submitting successful proposals. So we're going to give everybody just 30 seconds or so to do this. Thank you, Kelsey. Okay, I think we have our results. Kelsey, did you want to just go through these or would you like me to go through them?
Yeah, I could talk for a few seconds on it. So all of these results are being captured in real time and will ultimately get incorporated into the slide deck that we send out after the fact. So please continue to engage, answer, even if we move on from this slide, this presentation, it's the same code for all of the prompts. So please feel free to continue to answer the question. So it looks like we have a pretty good spread. Lots of beginners and folks who haven't been, a couple novices, and even some amateurs and pros. So we have a really good group with us today.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. And if you do have a question, you can go ahead and add it to the chat. And we're happy to help you throughout the webinar. If you have any questions, again, you could put them in there and we'll have somebody reach out to you. So, thanks for participating. It's always good, right? Good rule of thumb, know your audience. So thanks for being here today. Some of our panelists here today are some really amazing people, and I just want to thank all of them for their time and their commitment to helping other people submit successful conference proposals. I'm going to read their names very quickly. We have Bernadette Austin. She's a CEO of Civic Well and the current president for the California Planning Roundtable. We're also joined here today by Andrew Flores, who's the Vice President for Administration for the APA California Board. You've met Kelsey. Thank you, Kelsey, for being here today. She's our conference program coordinator. So thank you so much, Kelsey. Followed by Allison Joe. She is the former VP for Diversity and Equity and is part of APA California. Last but not least, we have Miguel Angel Vasquez, who's the immediate past president of the California Planning Roundtable. So thank you all so much for dedicating your time and mentoring others. And for our audience today, we will have this recording available so you could take down their information once you get the recording. So just a quick disclaimer. We know we've announced that, we have some pros here in the virtual room guiding you and giving you some amazing tips in submitting your conference proposal. But just want to, read this disclaimer that attendance at this webinar is obviously not required to be selected, nor it doesn't guarantee a selection for a conference session. But we're just delighted that you just decide to join us here today because obviously we want to make sure that we're available for you if you have any questions. Again, we're going to be walking through the application. Maybe, some things are not intuitive when you log on to the website. So we just want to make sure we guide you and we wish you the best as you go through this process. So let's get started. I'm going to hand this over now to Allison Joe
Or to me.
or to
And
Bernadette. Thank you, Bernadette.
perfect.
Yes,
We're pretty interchangeable at this point. So
yes.
Heidi, while I'm speaking, if you want to screen share and start on slide 7, that would be great. So hello, everybody. So glad that you've joined. As Heidi mentioned, I'm the president of the California Planning Roundtable. Really excited that you've joined us. Also, with my day job, I'm the CEO of Civic Well, and we also put on events. So I suppose that is why folks would be interested in hearing some of our perspective. Um, so I just wanted to let you know in a little bit, you'll be hearing from some of my fellow colleagues on this panel about how to put together a successful panel. I'm sorry, to put together a successful proposal. So just as a reminder, this year's theme is crafting our narrative, planning as storytelling. So we want to hear about the challenges, successes, and evolving narratives that define planning in our host community of Los Angeles and across the state. So we really want you to consider things like, how do we represent the diversity of the planning profession? We have folks who are in the public and private sector, but we also have some allied or adjacent industries. So health, law, environmental concerns. There's a lot of folks that we want to hear from. Also thinking about community partners, who's best positioned to speak on these topics. So as you've already seen, we do want to hear from you because you are not just potential presenters. You've also I assume have been attendees as well. So we'd like to know what you would like to see and what you would like to avoid. So if you go on to the next slide, so same thing, if you're following along in the chat, you'll see the prompt for the number. If you've already been on Mentimeter, you should be able to see it. So our first question is, as an attendee, what's the best way to capture the attention, your attention when it comes to conference sessions? So I'll just pause and make sure that my colleagues are getting that up. And while we're getting that up, start thinking about what you would like to see. So you'll be invited to share some of your ideas. Okay, it looks like it's live. So again, the question is, as an attendee, what's the best way to capture your attention? So type in a couple words, hit submit. We'll see some of the responses. And as people are bringing in responses, I'm going to cheat a little bit and share with you things that we've heard in the past. People really like interactive presentations. Folks are like, a pithy, catchy title. Is there something practical or actionable? So we're already seeing this being populated. There's some really good ideas here. I said catchy titles. Someone wrote clear titles. Absolutely. Interactive elements. Engaging panelists. Are you a good speaker? Relevant topics. Man, there's a lot of hot topics these days. So you can continue to look at what your fellow attendees are sharing. What you like to see is very much something that you should consider when you're putting together a proposal, and make sure that you're clearly articulating that. So having an activity, not just a PowerPoint, right? So great ideas. All right, I'm going to scoot on to the next slide. So the next prompt and Mentimeter, so this will come up in a moment. What has been your least favorite thing about a conference session? Ooh, I love this question. So same thing for you to start thinking about. So now we talked a little bit about, what are some things we like to see? So there we go. So Mentimeter is live. What have been your least favorite things about a conference session? All right, so I'll give people a minute to look at that. I love that. Anyone? Bueller? Oh gosh, I'm
Yes,
giving away my
don't be
age.
shy. This is anonymous.
So, like I said, I'll chime in some of the things. Folks don't want to be marketed to. Just a lot of text on a slide. I'm not here to read your slides. Long sessions. The other side of this is a lack of visuals. Folks don't want to just be talked to. I love in caps too much sitting. Let people move around. I'll give you a pro tip. One of a successful panel that I proposed, we had people get up and move their chairs and break into groups. That is something, as long as you're clearly articulating that that's an option. Those are the kinds of things that you can do. Echo chamber, that's excellent. Do we have diverse perspectives on the panel? A rambling or unclear message. Absolutely. You've heard people say, tell them what you're going to say it, and tell them what you told them. Oh, I like this one too. Someone literally wrote blah, blah, blah. No sales pitch. I just want to underscore that's definitely something that people need to think about. So thank you for sharing that. As we continue on and share out this recording as well as the slide deck, you'll be able to see what some of your fellow proposers shared. So why is your conference session proposal important? So in a minute, you're going to hear from my fellow panelists about specific ingredients for putting together a compelling proposal. But I want you to think differently. You're probably thinking about what I want to tell people, right? So again, think about that sales pitch or too many words. Think about this not just as from the perspective of a presenter or a proposer, but what's motivating the attendees. So some things to think about, and we'll do a deeper dive into these in a minute. How does your topic tie back to the overall theme? What is the take-home message? What actions do you want them to take? How can your topic change or improve the planning profession? How can this panel help improve the communities we serve? Who should be telling these stories? So those are just a few ideas to help generate, to get your creative juices flowing. You might have an idea, but answering some of these questions and the ones that my fellow panelists are going to talk about can really help refine and help you clearly articulate your proposal. So now let's dive deeper into these prompts. I'm going to turn over to my colleagues to talk a little bit more about this specific year.
Thank you, Bernadette. Really appreciate that. I am going to share, I'm going to be reading my notes, and I'm going to share an exercise that I think really helps align with this conference theme. It's from Creative Acts for Curious People, How to Think, Create, and Lead in Unconventional Ways. Author Sarah Stein Greenberg, and this activity is called What Went Down. It features the work of Seamus U. Hart with inspiration from Ken Adams. So a call for proposals for a conference is APA California, your peers, your colleagues, your friends, your mentors, asking you to share what you've been working on and what's keeping you busy. I want to share a story mapping exercise you can use to inform others, but also to distill and share your experience in a succinct and compelling manner. First, establish the entire possible story landscape by thinking back to when you started doing the work, a project, a program, and when you stopped. Make a quick list of all the things that occurred in that sequence in which they happened. Grab a piece of paper and draw a horizontal line across it. This line represents the average of your experience. Using the average as your anchor, graph the process that unfolded from left to right, showing all the highs and lows you went through. Now isolate the most dramatic moment. You find this moment by seeing where the shape of your graph goes from the highest high to the lowest low and back up to high again. Focus on drawing a box around just this portion of your graph. In doing so, you're creating a tighter frame, literally and figuratively, for your story. Ignore everything else on the page, and for a moment, explore how to use that segment as the story of your journey by articulating what's in that box. Capture 4 elements by writing them down or voicing them out loud. Where were you? When was this? And what were you trying to do? What went wrong? How did you finally fix it? What did you do? What is the takeaway? Elaborate on these elements and you've got a story to work with. When you share a story that you've built using this exercise, your listener will resonate with it because of the underlying structure is very similar tale. The context sets the scene, then an obstacle or problem creates tension. The way you overcame the issue offers relief from the tension in the form of a resolution, which leads to a lesson or idea that helps your audience make sense of what has happened. Of course, there's never just one story from our work or any other experiences we've had. There are many ways to look at it. If you shift your focus frame to a different part of your graph, what story would result? How would people think differently about you and your work?
Call the people who already live. Thank you so much for understanding. I appreciate your understanding. Okay. Okay, perfect.
So I want to go ahead and move on to the next slide. So definitely the APA California, the conference host committee, and the readers, the reviewers, are committed to providing an exceptional program in Los Angeles. So the rigor with which you draft your abstract proposal is extremely valuable, as well as it being compelling and then also communicating. So I hope you found the exercise helpful for creating a narrative, because that'll be key in communicating whatever you want to present at the conference. Next slide.
You should be able to see slide 13. Is it visible?
Okay.
Yeah?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Awesome. Thank you.
And then I want to pass it off and share with Miguel.
Thank you so much, Andrew. I think this is one of my favorite slides, mainly because in essence, anybody can submit a proposal. There's a few caveats with that. Obviously, you want to make sure that whoever you work with is a member of APA, because you have to have a member ID number to be able to submit. And that is probably the only, I would call it, bureaucratic requirement. But other than that, if you're not a member of APA, for instance, you may know planners who are members of APA, and you can ask them to collaborate with you. I think it's important to reflect on where you're at in your career, because that will also depend on who you will be collaborating with. In some instances, I think in the past there have been session proposals in which only one individual would submit, for instance, for the Pecha Kucha type of sessions in which you present for 5 minutes and you only have a limited amount of slides. But by and large, the proposal should include different perspectives, and that is part of who you want to consider as part of your submittal. So yeah, basically any planner if you want to go to the next slide so we can just go through some examples. Planners working in the public sector, in the private sector, also nonprofits, community advocates, pretty much anybody, any community member can be part of the conversation. We have care holders, stakeholders, and other non-planning professionals. I think when you look into including people from other disciplines, your proposal would also have a greater advantage. I think somebody mentioned in one of the Mentimeters the idea of the echo chamber. So we don't necessarily want to hear planners talking to planners. I think it's very important to bring people from the outside with other perspectives that can actually teach us how to get a plan prepared or how to get it implemented. Now, the other caveat that is really, really important, and this is a little bit of the nature of things. You also need to make sure that the people who will be participating have the ability to attend. There's an element of paying for travel, paying for food, paying for registration. Not everyone is able to attend the full conference. And I do know that the chapter has also, I think they have a way to bring other voices without necessarily incurring a fee if they are coming just to speak. But you have to keep that into consideration. So when you ask anybody, you need to make sure that you know what resources are available, or that they know that they will have to pay their way to attend the conference. But would you like to add anything else to that, Andrew or Kelsey?
I think, thank you, Miguel. That was great. Just a quick clarification because I do see a few questions coming in on it. I just want to clarify, you do not need to be an APA member to submit. The reviewers are seeking a diverse range of proposals, and we want the panel to reflect that. So oftentimes, yes, your panel will have APA members, AICP, but you don't need a APA member ID to submit a proposal. We're using a new platform this year, and I'll walk through that momentarily.
That is great. I wonder, do you know if that is also the same case for national? I'm just curious.
I don't know.
Okay. Well, we'll just go with your process, which is pretty awesome. No need to be a member. Thanks, Kelsey, for clarifying. Andrew?
No, I
I
don't have anything
guess
to
we
add,
can
Miguel.
then move on to the next slide to getting started on the nuts and bolts.
All right, so I will take this one. For those of you who have submitted in the past, we are using a new submittal platform. So if you already have a username and ID, please be advised that you will need to create a new one. We're going to kind of walk through some of that. Attached to this slide and to the call for proposals itself is a form for submittal instructions. This is like a step-by-step, everything that you need to know to submit a proposal with character limits, which questions you need to answer. So this kind of helps you get together all of the materials that you'll need. And then all proposals are submitted through the AI Evolution website. That link will also be shared with you in this slide deck. As mentioned, it is different from APA National and your chapter only membership. This is a totally independent username and password. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, Heidi. And I'm just going to very quickly walk through what it looks like. Sometimes like one of the barriers or obstacles we face is the unfamiliar. So I'm going to try and remove that barrier and give everybody kind of exposure to what submitting actually looks like. And I'm trying really hard not to embarrass myself by opening up anything incorrect. So bear with me if you see something weird. Okay, so here I am just on the APA California website. If anybody can't see my screen, please ping the chat. But all of the social media posts, all of the materials in the e-letter that's going out all have the direct link. So you may not have to do all of this navigation, but you're going to select conference and then 2026 conference call for proposals. So it's open until February 9th. That is the deadline, 11:59 p.m. So you have all day on the 9th. There's some information on the conference theme. And then the moderator instructions that I touched on are here as well. So you have everything that you'll need to submit, the title, session type, so on and so forth. I'm not going to spend a ton of time on that. All of our email addresses are available in the slide deck, so any specific questions can be asked. And when you're ready, you're going to submit a proposal. So I can't show you what it looks like to create the account because I've already done it, but I do have kind of my speaker notes. So when you first create the account, you will receive an auto-generated email, and it comes from an email address that is ai-support@communitybrands.com. Just a heads up in case you have really strong spam filters on your email address. You'll be assigned a temporary password at that time. And the very first time that you use it to log in, you'll be prompted to create a password. And so your email address is your username, and the password you create becomes your password. At that time, you can do your speaker bio or your headshot, but you won't be required to at that time. And then after that, you'll sign in. It will look like this. You'll go to My Submissions. So I have kind of a test submission here, but you'll make sure you're at 2026 APA California Conference, create a submission. You're going to create a title. You have 100 characters. So whatever your catchy title is going to be, and your session type. So standard educational sessions are education sessions. We are accepting ideas for mobile workshops this year. So if you have a mobile workshop idea, you can select that. And same with student program sessions. If you have an idea for a student session on student day, go ahead and select that. You're going to save. And then you're going to save and proceed. So moderator and speakers, it's going to ask that as submitter, you understand that you are the moderator. So if you're submitting the proposal, you become by default the moderator of that proposal. That doesn't mean you can't speak on the panel as well. It just means you become the keeper of it. All of the formal communications go to the moderator. So make sure if you're planning on changing jobs or something of that nature, that you set the email address to one that you will have access to receive those important communications. So you just select yes to confirm that. And then for education sessions, you do need to submit at least 2 speakers. And when you add those speakers, they receive an auto-generated email that says, hey, so-and-so has added you as a speaker on a session titled tips, how to submit a webinar. So your speakers are automatically notified, which helps. It kind of streamlines things, but also if you're just adding speakers, they're going to say, hey, I didn't agree to be on this panel. So just heads up, as soon as you add a speaker, they do get that notification. If they don't exist in the system, you're going to have to add them or ask that they get added. So we have a couple of folks that are a part of APA staff that I'm just adding for purposes of demonstration. So Jenna Bailey, she is with Compass Management. So she's already created a speaker profile, so I can click submit. She now has received an email that I've added her. And because the minimum is 2, I'm going to add one more, which is Brian, also part of Compass Management as for APA California. So those are my 2 speakers. That satisfies the minimum requirement. You can add more. And then I'm going to save and proceed. My watch is going off because I'm getting notified that speakers have been submitted. So session summary, you have 300 characters here. You just kind of want to succinctly summarize what your session is about. I'm going to be really boring and use the word test for all of these text boxes. Your session abstract is an outline of the session proposal. There's little sentence briefs on what this text box should be, so please use them. There's a little bit more additional information in the moderator submittal instructions. This one you have up to 15 characters, so make sure you use it. You have the full 1,500 characters at your disposal. And I'll let you know that all of these text boxes are what the reviewers receive. So this is the information that they're actually reviewing to adequately assess your session. So your learning objectives, you have 1,000 characters. These are the takeaways, like what are attendees going to take away by attending this session? What do they take back to their job? What do they take back, ethically in decision making as a planner, that kind of thing. What are the key takeaways? What are the tools that you are equipping them with? And then the primary topic. So I think there's 18. You choose a primary topic. This just helps us for understanding the variety of sessions that we're receiving. Sessions do not get scored according to primary topics. This just helps us identify what types of reviewers should review which types of proposals. So you'll select something. Secondary topic, you'll notice there's not an asterisk. It's not required. You can provide a secondary topic, but you do not have to. So then you come to additional information. There's 2 different boxes that you need to click into. So the first one, is this my first time submitting a proposal? Yes or no? Again, you're not getting scored according to this. This is data keeping. This is how we identify whether or not we need to do webinars like this, if there's any kind of interest in this. So you'll select that. All sessions are 75 minutes. Moderators do have an option to propose a double session, which is 2 concurrent back-to-back 75-minute sessions. So that's like, for those who are familiar, the annual legislative update is always a double session, 2 parts. So if your session cannot fit into 75 minutes, you can select yes. And if you select yes, we ask for justification. What about your session needs so much time? If not, you just select no. Are you proposing a local session? This is important for our reviewers and for our program because the CHC and the host section, which is Los Angeles, gets up to 20% of the program for local sessions. So if there's something in the LA section that deserves highlighting, make sure that you select yes there. And also most sessions default to theater style unless you select yes here for a round setup. And that's the round tables with 10 people per round table for like workshops and activities and things like that. If you do not select yes here, you will be defaulted to theater and we can't change it, which is why we want to know ahead of time, because like AV and room setup is all separate and additional costs, and we plan for that up front. So we really want to know what types of room setups that we need. I'm almost done. I know it's a lot of talking. So then back to additional information, it's going to ask you about mandatory CM. There's sometimes confusion about this. All sessions in the program, aside from student sessions, receive CM credits, standard CM. This is not regarding that. This is regarding if you are applying for one of the mandatory CM categories, which is equity, ethics, law, or sustainability and resilience. So if you're selecting one of those, it's going to ask for the justification because there's additional requirements for mandatory CM sessions. If you select does not meet criteria, it will prompt you on if you want your session to be identified for equity, diversity, and inclusion focus. So maybe you don't quite meet the requirements for equity CM, but your session does have, an equity perspective, but you couldn't quite meet the additional criteria. So you would select yes, and then you would just give like a brief justification on why. You can save and proceed from there, and then you get to preview everything. You're going to acknowledge that you'll confirm your availability should you be selected. And you finalize. A very cool thing about this year's is once you fully submit, so this one says incomplete, this one's been fully submitted, right here is going to be what your session title is. You can click in that at any time prior to the close of the call for proposals and update or modify your session. So I don't want it to be called test anymore. I want it to be called test 4. And those changes will be reflected up until the very last day, and you have to go back and finalize again. Additionally, you can withdraw. So say you were you submitted a session and then something came up and you can't do it anymore by the 9th or something like that. You can also withdraw your session at any time. So that is the submittal process, nuts and bolts there. There's, again, my email address, all of our email addresses will be in this slide deck. If you have any issues with, you know, the technology of it, getting into the portal, you're not receiving your temporary password, please reach out to us. Like, we're happy to help. If you have any questions with filling it out, please reach out to us. We're happy to help. And just make sure you give yourself enough time to make that new account. Because even if you have one now, even if you have an APA account, I know there's a lot of changes with APA membership and logging on to all of that. And this is like another change, but just make sure you give yourself enough time to actually make the account so you can get the submittal in. And so with that, we can go to our next slide, and I'll hand it back over to Heidi.
Hi, Kelsey. Thank you so much. That was really helpful. We are going to go to the next slide where we have more Mentimeter questions, but I just want to highlight, you know, it's greatly appreciated that, you know, obviously Bernadette gave us some tips, Miguel did too. And Andrew, thank you so much for offering us this reflection exercise. If somebody is having just a moment of like reflection and they want to follow a more methodical process to ask themselves, you know, what is my message? What is my story as I'm trying to develop my proposal? I think that's a really helpful exercise as well. And Kelsey, I know that we, you know, we're pressed for time, but we do appreciate everything that you went through. And for all of our participants for today, just wanted to remind everybody that this webinar will be recorded. So you can go back and forth later on. The recording will be available, I think, by Monday or maybe earlier. And we'll share it with everybody that's participated today. So I am going to move on to the next Mentimeter question. And the code is still the same code. You would log on to menti.com. That's menti.com. And the code is here on the slide. The code is 61623925. And the previous question should pop up, but we want you to please go to questions 3 and 4. And I'll defer to our panelists. Did you want to go through each question? And then Kelsey, you would kind of read the responses on Mentimeter?
Yeah, sure. So we'll start with question 3. So what topics is everybody most interested in learning about? This is like our brainstorm. This is your opportunity to kind of see what other people on this webinar are interested in learning about and potentially crafting some kind of session proposal around that. So the responses are coming in. So I'm going to go ahead and share those responses right now as they're trickling. So urban design, topics you don't come across in day-to-day planning, nature-based planning and solutions, design, public space equity, unconventional topics. Again, as we move on and move through these Mentimeter poll questions, like, please continue to answer, because we will export these answers into the slide deck that we will be sharing with everybody. So lots of really great ideas here. Economic development and planning, urban forestry. That's a good one. I don't think I've ever been to a session on urban forestry. A mobile workshop on historic preservation. LA would be a great place for something like that. Solidarity economy. That's a good one. Lots of good things. We got 29. Wow. Investing in employment zones, brownfield reuse. So keep your questions coming in, and we'll go to the next brainstorming question. What are you most interested in presenting about? So kind of flipping the script a little bit, like, what do you want to present about? What's an idea that you have that you want to share with everybody that you think is really great? Data centers and environmental justice, that's a good one. I think most of us probably saw an article about that somewhat recently. Safe routes to school, good one, good one. Planning in LA hoods, that's a good one. And I'm just randomly reading responses. I'm not reading, like, this isn't a subliminal message. I'm only reading the ones that I like or anything like that. I'm just kind of picking and choosing. Prop 218 process, inclusive means of increasing housing supply, supporting street vendors. That's a great one. Transit, EJ communities in LA. So keep kind of popping your questions or your answers to the questions there. And then I think we can turn it back to you, Heidi.
Thank you so much, Kelsey. Those are all great topics that, they're very intersectional. And I think that, we look forward to supporting you and, submitting those proposals and possibly connecting with others that might be participating today. I know that Bernadette, Allison, Kelsey, they're going to, move on with the next set of slides. But this is really an opportunity to connect with others. And the Mentimeter is just kind of like, to get a temperature check. But we do think that all of these topics, there's so much to draw from in Los Angeles. I mean, you have, over 493 square miles of land here. And we're surrounded by so many amazing jurisdictions that are also doing a lot of great work. But as you can see in this phone call, even the panelists were drawing from all parts of California. So we also don't want to forget about that, some of our collaborations and partnerships across the state. And with that, I will turn it over to the rest of our panelists who are going to be just guiding us through some tips and maybe even some more brainstorming and making more of those connections. So I'm going to turn it over to Bernadette and Allison.
Yeah. Hi, folks. It's me again. So I just wanted to note, especially for the folks who might be tuning into the recording, there's a lot of chatter going on in the chat. So I do encourage folks to review some of the responses. There's also on the bottom of your screen, you can put questions in Q&A, and also our folks, our panelists and experts are answering those questions as well. So there's a lot of technical questions. A lot of the questions that are coming up, we can provide clarification in, again, the email that accompanies this recording. So inspiration for sessions, I'll just provide some initial thoughts, and then Allison and Miguel, you can chime in with your additional ideas as well. So now that you've seen what you all in attendance are interested in learning more about, as well as what you are possibly thinking about as for potential panels, these are some really good prompt questions. Again, going back to that theme of storytelling, that's a way to think about how this is compelling, and also who is telling the story. So I'll pause and see if Miguel and Allison want to add anything, any recommendations.
I think I can share and also answer a question related to the mobile workshops. So this is what I have to say. First, hopefully, if you are planning to organize a mobile workshop, hopefully you have attended one in the past, so you can have a sense of how it flows. Mobile workshops vary in in complexity. Sometimes you have to travel far. Sometimes you have to, you may have a bus. Sometimes you may have to take public transportation, or sometimes maybe by walking. So keep that into consideration. But mainly from my experience, I organized 2 mobile workshops during the Riverside Conference, and it was just amazing. 2 different topics, obviously, but the dynamics were very similar in the sense that I knew 2 projects that were really important to highlight, but they were not necessarily my projects. I knew about them, and I was like, I gotta put a spotlight on this. And I had the relationships with the people who were able to facilitate getting the right speakers to share about the project. So sometimes you don't necessarily have to be the one doing all the talking, but you have to assemble a group of people that can help you tell the story that you feel is really important for planners to share. The amount of work that goes into a mobile workshop is probably, I'm going to say, 3 times as much as doing a panel, because in a panel you have a set location, you only speak for, your panel might be 45 minutes to an hour and a half, depending on the format. But for mobile workshops, there are logistics involved that you have to take into account. Are you going to feed people? Are you going to have sunscreen? If the day is going to be really sunny, do you have to provide water? So think about that. So you may want to find a list of things that will go into the development of your vision to assemble it, and you want to start early on. The sooner the better, because again, it takes quite a bit of time to get the right people to collaborate with you, especially if you don't have a means to pay them. You will be asking for favors for people who know about the project to share for you. So I'll stop there.
Yeah, no, Miguel, that's great insight and feedback, particularly on the mobile workshops, which is a different component that we're, soliciting for. And if I can get clarification from Kelsey, are we actually asking them to submit mobile workshops through this proposal portal?
Yes, so this year we are accepting mobile workshop ideas through the portal. Those do not get scored and evaluated by reviewers, though. They automatically get sorted and sent off to the mobile workshop subcommittee. And what they're evaluating is whether or not, one, it's a good idea, and two, if it's feasible to achieve through a mobile workshop. So it's not the same set of criteria. Same with student sessions, automatically to the student subcommittee.
Perfect. Yeah, both. It's really great that that's all kind of done in one platform. It gives a great opportunity for people who are locals. And there was a question about defining local. I think if it's in a mobile workshop, certainly transportation and logistics is a really big important component to a local mobile workshop and what that defines. And offering a range, because we do have a limited time that we're going to actually be at conference, and trying to make sure that that fits makes a lot of sense. In terms of local session, I think I would continue to work as submit a session. It is the LA sections hosted conference. And I think there would probably be some considerations more for LA section, so LA County, in that. But if you are in Orange County, if you're in Seal Beach and you're right on or Long Beach, right? Those are things that are still very local, very accessible, and certainly worth submitting. And I would say don't submit because you don't think that it's going to qualify as a local session. But there may be some refinements to that. I wanted to just, for those of you who are thinking about ideas for submitting a session and that inspiration of what you might be wanting to create, I would always go back to what would you want to present and what are you passionate about presenting? What makes it most interesting for you to present this information? Is it about the story of the end outcome? Is it about the fact that you had so many challenges you didn't know what to do? And these are things that there's a commonality with other planners who are going to come to this session and say, I remember I was in a similar situation. I want to hear more about theirs and actually be in community with other planners and other consultants and other people who have community members who have had the same struggle, and hear about that. Or if it's about a particular geography or activity that is really impactful. We think a lot about recovery from wildfires. from urban fires, from things like thinking about large scale sports events that are coming to our communities faster than we know it. Thinking about gentrification, displacement, thinking about urban corridors. There's plenty of things that are really interesting, but consider it as these session proposals as your first pitch and your first rationale for reason for sharing. Everything. This is not intended to be an academic conference. We are really hoping to get academia involved, but the root of all of this is to make sure that our planning community and people who are working in these planning areas, in areas that are planning adjacent, have similar touch points of experiences across the state that you might be able to share about your experiences, and that we are able to communicate that really clearly to people. So the session proposal has to be really clear. It has to be really thoughtful in terms of who is telling that story, and giving those who are attending a real set of takeaways from those conversations. I'll pause there. I'm just appreciative of the work that you all are going to do to put in these proposals, and knowing that there's a lot of people who are rooting for you, even as you're trying to go through the process. And even if you are not ultimately submitted, we want to be able to encourage you to do it, and share and learn what you want to share. Right. I think that's really important for us as we go through this.
I can answer some of the other questions related to mobile workshops
Yeah,
based on
if we
my
want to adjust, if
experience.
we just want to move the screen to the next one, and yeah, Miguel and Allison, you might be best positioned to answer some of the questions. We're gonna do the best we can to answer the questions. Um, my colleagues are doing a great job of responding. So check not in the Q&A section also the answered questions, because people may be asking questions that you have and haven't thought to ask yet. But yeah, Miguel, if you want to kick things off.
Yeah, so the first one related to the minimum speakers, I think it's really up to you. But you have to again think about how much time do I have? How much time do I want each person to speak on a particular topic? You may have to move from location to location. So who is the best? I think there was that that idea early on. Who is the best person to tell the story? Sometimes your elected official may not be as effective as the community advocate. But you may not have access to the community advocate, but you may have a connection with the mayor, so you may want to work with that. So you need to play with that. And there's another question related to uh, the fees for transportation. I think for the Riverside conference, and I don't know if this has changed, but I think the local section, they had budget for, I don't know, I'm just gonna say 4 mobile workshops. In my case, I wasn't, I proposed a mobile workshop that did not entail traveling by bus to 15 miles away from the location. So I don't know if Kelsey is a little more familiar with that process that you can share.
Sure. So the way mobile workshops work is there's a mobile workshop subcommittee who is taking ideas from everywhere. They're coming up with their own, they're soliciting from outside, and they're taking them through this call for proposals. Then they work to develop like the logistics and the feasibility. So some may involve transportation, and it will be by bus or something like that. So the bus will drop off and pick up at a neutral point at the conference center. So I don't know if it's going to be right outside the hotel or where it is, but somewhere very like walkable and accessible. It's not going to be like across town where you need separate transportation just to get to it. And then they'll drive you to the mobile workshop. You'll do the mobile workshop and you'll come back. So some mobile workshops do have a cost associated with them that is separate from the conference registration fees that you'll have to pay separately. So to attend the mobile workshop, it could be, $5, $15, $50. It just varies on what the mobile workshop actually includes. So if you sign up for it and you pay the fee for it, at that point, everything is taken care of for you to attend that mobile workshop, from transportation, any food that may or may not be provided, plus the actual tour and learning objectives and things like that. So the proposers do not have to pay or fundraise or anything like that to develop a mobile workshop. That's the job of the mobile workshop subcommittee that will ultimately get baked into any fee required for mobile workshops. And there's levels. There are free mobile workshops, and walking tours are very low-cost mobile workshops, and there are pricier mobile workshops. So it just depends on what comes in and what's kind of deemed feasible and infeasible at that time.
One of the things I
Thank
just
you,
wanted to go
Kelsey.
back and so what we've been able to do is answer as many of the questions in the Q&A as possible. There are some things that it sounds like they're kind of a little bit more, we should actually formalize them as questions and answers that we can put out in a document. It might be a good follow-up. One of the things I wanted to say just is out loud is in terms of speakers and registration. So let's make sure that we emphasize that if you are submitting a submittal for a conference proposal, mobile workshop, or otherwise, one of the things that is best and is really helpful to do is to just get an idea of who the primary people on your. Sorry, I'm going to stop for a second. If you're putting together a panel, not a mobile workshop, get a list of the potential speakers that you have, recognizing that you have a set amount of time that you want to have to present your information. Thinking about who you want to present that information, what's best representative to tell the story. And highly encouraged to have someone, if you can, from that local community, local government agency, who was a direct participant in this activity as part of that panel. All of the speakers have to be, it's best to try to identify your speakers up front. So in the next couple weeks before the proposal submittal is due, having all of those proposers, the panelists for your panel identified and acknowledged. And we highly recommend not just adding people to a proposer panel as a panel without first confirming their availability, their interest. Please do not just add panelists on your panel because you'd like them to be on your panel. That kind of approach doesn't necessarily work in the long run. And we really want you to be honest about who you have confirmed and who is actually going to be presenting on that panel. As you are working through, and that is part of the review of the process of the proposal itself. Once you've been accepted, there are a number of things as a proposal. There are a number of things that can happen. Sometimes panelists aren't able to do it. Sometimes you need to add and replace people, and that is on a case-by-case basis. And there will be a time frame where you can do that and make changes to your panel itself. So thinking about that this way, you're really thinking about a longer term planning for your panel now, and not necessarily as it comes over the summer. And certainly we hope that it won't happen closer to the actual conference itself. For your mobile workshop, I think you also have to have those panelists identified, but no, you don't. It's just a proposal.
Yeah,
Okay.
so for mobile workshops, it's literally a concept, an idea for the subcommittee
Perfect.
to flesh out. So only sessions require the 2 full speakers and a moderator at the time of submittal.
Perfect. Okay. And then the questions around requirements for APA membership, we've I think fairly clearly identified that those, you do not have to be an APA member to propose a panel, to serve on a session. What does matter is if you are looking for specific AICP credit as CM credits, and that is a different that's a different set of qualifications. So I just wanted to be really clear about those things first. For those of you who are looking to try to looking to flesh out and round out your panel a little more, we have also in the past tried to do a little bit of panelist matching for panels. We had a number, and what we'll do is as we send the webinar recording and slides out, we'll also include those Mentimeter slides and responses. We just add them into the slide deck. And what we can do is also help facilitate anyone who might be interested in doing a panel on, say, you know, mobile food carts, on street vendors, on the Olympics, on all sorts of things, and we can help facilitate some of that. We are fairly limited in terms of how we do that. It's really more of a kind of of an interest. So that is something that that we are happy to help support. We also really want to encourage just a different voice and different, and encourage those of you who have never submitted a proposal before, who don't have fancy marketing teams or one marketing person who's never to help submit, in terms of getting different voices and different perspectives forward. So that's one of the things that we can help connect you with, especially if you're an emerging planner, relatively new to APA. Please reach out to us and to Heidi, and to any of the panelists to be able to provide some support in that. If we may be able to connect you with actually some pretty some others who are thinking about similar proposals. So I'll pause there and see if there's anything else. I think we've covered most of the questions on this, and this is kind of really the chance for additional questions as they come through. And I think we've answered all of the Q&As too, which is great.
Thank you so much, Allison. As you were talking about all these combined topics, I was toggling between the slides, but I'm back on slide number 19, and I do want to emphasize what Allison was talking about earlier in terms of connecting folks if they have some inspiration for ideas, especially if maybe you're in one city and you want to connect with folks from, I don't know, Central California or the Inland Empire or Sacramento. We're happy to be those connectors as you're getting ready for all this. The proposals are due on February 9th. At 11:59 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So please make a note of that and prepare. And if you have any questions, obviously we're all here to help. There is an email here on slide number 20 that you can reach out to as well. And the last slide, and I don't know if you want to talk more about future questions, Allison, but I think that we want to be able to be as helpful as possible in informing maybe future conferences. What kind of feedback do you want the proposal review committee to think about? And obviously, how can we make the most out of you being a presenter? So there's all kinds of guidance tips. Yes, go ahead, Allison.
No, happy to do that. So part of it is for those of you who are interested in forming future conferences, start with LA. Right. So connect with the APA LA section. Certainly the APA California conference leads, both Kelsey and Robert, who is our VP of conferences, in the kinds of things that you want to see. We are moving really quickly in terms of how to shape LA in October. But next year the Sac Valley section is hosting, and we look to everything every year. It gets better and better. So I'm excited to see what happens in the next year. If October isn't the right time frame, think about what we want to do, what you might want to do there. There's also opportunities to work with our local sections to help develop programs that the local sections put on. So this may not be a statewide conference activity. This may be something that we can bring to a local section, which we can also do virtually and share with the rest of our members throughout the state. So I think there's definitely that opportunity. And so think of it as a way to develop an iterative and an ongoing set of learning opportunities, professional development opportunities for now and in the future. There are some things to also think about in terms of making the most of being a session presenter. A lot of this is if you've never been a session presenter before, if you've never moderated a panel, if you've never submitted a session proposal, going through this recording, reaching out to us individually, and kind of gathering your thoughts about how and what do you want a session to look like is really, really thoughtful and helpful. I would say go back to where Andrew was really helpful in doing a really contemplative and thoughtful approach to what do I want to see in a panel? What do I want to see in a presentation? And then also giving us feedback on the challenges of this process so that we can be better about making sure we're able to support new and different ideas as we move forward. It's a planner, so there's a process to all of it. And sometimes it's really hard to change quickly, but sometimes we can take some great ideas and put them into reality. There are a couple of questions in the Q&A that I wanted to make sure we addressed. One about a mix of public and private sector panelists. I don't believe that there's any special sauce to that. And it does depend on whether or not you're able to capture the story well. I think about big things that are hard to capture with unless you have community in the spaces that you're talking about. I think about some of the bigger projects that sometimes it's great to have someone from, I'm going to take a random project that I may or may not be working about things like big regional rail, right? If you're talking about having someone that is coming through and there's a consultant that works for that project, great. But it may also be nice to get a perspective from someone who is directly from that agency and can actually talk about how challenging it is to work with on that side and work with the consultants. So there's no special sauce. There's certainly no formula in terms of selection, but if you have 3 panelists, all from the same consulting firm that represent 3 different perspectives, maybe there's a way to switch it up a little bit. So you have someone who is not necessarily from that consulting firm, private sector firm, and maybe you have a way to bring either a public sector or community-based participant in it. Right. Just thinking about it in that way in a balance, you may be talking about 3 different subjects, but it might be better to present the subject matter with a variety of perspectives. Transcripts, I believe that there is a way to do transcripts available from the Zoom and from the Zoom recording, but we will have the recordings available. And how do the goals of the student sessions differ from the regular session? The goals are generally the same, but your audience is different, right? So think of it as how would you want to be able to present to a group of students. We have the first day of the conference is free for all students. I don't like calling it student day because I think every day should be student day, but this one is particularly free for all students who come and attend. And so you will have a captive and interested audience. It's actually really exciting to see all the students come in and they're very excited to meet everyone. And so thinking about that audience and that and trying to make sure it captures the needs of of the students who are attending, and students from all backgrounds. So from undergrads who are just starting to graduate students to community college students and others who are studying planning, and think about the range. I'm going to pause. I'm looking at future questions and that slide. Other kinds of guidance that APA California can present. I think what we've got here is provide. I think what we've got here is actually our amazing group of panelists here. I love working with all of you in different ways, and I actually think that if there are things that we can do around panel or speaker support to get the proposals submitted first, and then after the submissions are received and there are needs for support there. That's, I think, a separate section, but I think that's please feel free to reach out to any of us to provide that kind of for questions, right? And I'll pause there.
Before I jump off, I'd like to share quickly the idea that being a presenter is not a technical endeavor. I think it is essential for any planner to take the risk of putting themselves out there and share their passions, their knowledge. I'll give you a quick example. When I first submitted my first proposal, it was actually through the California Planning Roundtable was doing a different kind of thing during the Hollywood conference. That was over, I don't know, decade ago, long time ago. And they were asking for people to submit ideas for an art salon. And I was like, you know what? I'm passionate about the arts. I have something to share, but I didn't know how to go about it. So that opportunity was instrumental for me to grow my own practice. But that was just one component. But through that connection that I made with the California Planning Roundtable, I met legends in planning, including James Rojas, who was here in the call. And I had read about his work, and I found myself talking to him, and we became friends, and he became a mentor. So the idea of submitting a proposal is not just like, okay, I just submitted, I presented, goodbye. I think for planners who are emerging and students, this is an opportunity to build long lasting relationships with people who will walk along your way and will provide also opportunities for you when they come around. So use this as an excuse to build your network. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Miguel. Does anybody else have any other inspirational tips or thoughts before we wrap up? Allison, that was amazing. Thank you for re-energizing us with a lot of those, critical thinking questions. I think it is important for us to create these spaces and these webinars where we're reflecting, thinking critically, making connections. A lot of the feedback that we get from the conferences is to make them meaningful, to have, conference sessions where we're making those connections and also providing something tangible, advice, tips, to the rest of our colleagues. And I think we said it throughout the webinar today, but also thinking about interactive and, just inclusive practices when we're trying to think about how we're going to, craft a panel or how we're going to organize, our intro or what kind of exercises or prompting questions we're going to include or even activities. I've seen some APA conferences just include a more interactive piece. So if you have any other questions, we're happy to answer them. A lot of our emails are here. For more information and questions, you could also email the annual conference at apacalifornia.org email. You're also welcome to email any of us on this call. We're happy to answer those questions. And I just want to thank you so much, Allison, for encouraging me to hop in here and work with the rest of our colleagues here from all over the state to put this webinar together. It's been really amazing. So just thank you so much for your mentorship and encouragement. And I look forward to working with everybody as we get ready for the conference and all the other great things that we're doing across the state. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
I just wanted to add I dropped off the call. I don't know what happened, but there was a Q&A specifically with my name. I don't know if it was a question for me, but I didn't see it. I just saw my name. So please, whoever that was, if you're still on the call, please feel free to email me. My email is on the screen. And then one point of clarification, there was a lot of questions about max number of speakers. The portal does have a max. So just FYI, 4 speakers can be submitted plus your moderator. So that's 5 total in the platform and in any program materials. If you have more speakers on game day during the session, that's separate. But we have set AV with 4 mics. So we do cap it at 4 speakers plus a moderator. So if you're trying to plug in speakers beyond that, you will get an error message. So just, I wanted to point that out. Sorry for the confusion there. You're not necessarily capped in real time, but you are capped on the portal and in the materials.
Well, with that, thank you so much, Kelsey. We will be providing the recording and other just tools to keep communicating and supporting each other. So thank you so much.